Just when you thought that virtual reality was taking its last huffs on the dirty, rusting respirator that is Half-Life Alyx's success, I'm here, dropping in hot and heavy like a fat morning shit to summarize all my thoughts on Bonelabs, the new prized turkey and savior of VR by goated developers Stress Level Zero, which releases today at 5 a.m. Pacific Time. I was and still am a massive fan to the prequel of this game, Boneworks, which released in December of 2019. It brought with it some of the most advanced VR interaction that we had ever seen, and nothing since then has quite topped it. Thanks in part to the underlying physics engine interaction system that Stress Level Zero developed to be the game's foundation, working to give us somewhat consistent and believable interactions between the player, their physically simulated bodies, objects, weapons, enemies, and the environment. From what I've seen from trailers and recent demonstrations, with Bonelabs they've fine-tuned this engine and turned it up a notch higher, all the way to 11. This new system that the game is built around is called Marrow, which introduces some new systems and improves upon others compared to the old engine. Now, a lot of what they're showing in terms of the interactions, we've already seen in Boneworks. The enemies and your avatar have physical bodies, complete with simulated muscles and bones, features like enemies reacting to your grasp, taking crippling damage based on where they're hit, as well as the physically simulated guns and weapons we've seen before in Boneworks. But thankfully, there are some new features, and what I'm excited about is what's new. So let's touch on those points now. Firstly, the main gimmick and crutch that Bonelabs is going to be hobbling in on is its body-changing mechanic. Simply pull on a ripcord at your elbow, and you can cycle between different avatars, which are automatically gifted stats by the Marrow system, based on the size and shape of the model, such as height, mass, agility, speed, strength upper, strength lower, vitality, and intelligence. For an example of how this works, larger, thicker models will be gifted more strength and vitality, as well as mass, but burdened with lower speed and agility, while slender, more athletic models will be gifted higher speed and agility, but burdened with lower strength, mass, and vitality. Models short in stature, aka short kings and queens, will be able to fit in places others just can't, but will be low in all the other physical stats. What's absolutely awesome about this system, apart from the infinite gameplay possibilities it opens up, is that you can upload your own custom avatars, and the game will figure out the stats based on the model's shape and size and get that virtual bod working dynamically with your IRL movements by use of this new body remapping system, which in the lead dev's words, warps the space of your track so that the haptic feedback and self-touch aligns with the self-touch of your avatar. Frick yeah. This was demoed recently to work in such a way that if you were to touch your own waist, the avatar in-game will touch theirs, regardless of their freakishly large or svelte proportions, all with minimal clipping. This is something that I haven't seen any other avatar-based game get right, and could be huge for in-game immersion. Personally, I'm going to be maxing my intelligence stat, so I'm guessing I'll need to upload this guy. Secondly, there's the enhanced level design and new and improved in-game mechanics which have been shown off in the latest gameplay trailers and demonstrations. Improved level designs is a biggie, as the levels did feel admittedly bare bones in Boneworks, with most levels feeling more like a community-made sandbox playground than a linear adventure, complete with varying locales, environments and set pieces that you would expect in a good story-based adventure game. I can remember flailing around and feeling quite motion sick and disorientated in certain levels in the original, due to a few cases of wonky level design and janky in-game mechanics that left me clambering and falling off teetering objects and blocks over and over and over again. The latest gameplay trailers clearly show an improvement in this area, with more varied environments demoed that look fun to progress through, or custom built for an epic shootout. I've seen medieval dungeons complete with skeletons, sliding down drain pipes, epic gauntlets situated over lava, cool-looking sections with physics-based puzzles in which you need to utilize a body swap mechanic, and even trains. Some other in-game mechanics that are new for this game that I'm excited for include the commandeering of vehicles, which you can jump into and drive seated or standing on the fly without having to pause the game. This is pretty genius. As well as some subtle but much needed improvements to the way your avatar's legs interact with the objects and the environment. I've noticed that it looks like your avatar's legs will no longer get stuck on small objects that in the past required a jump input to get over and felt extremely janky, but will instead step over small objects and even dynamically vault over larger objects in a way that looks straight out of a parkour-focused game. Something I also noticed, apart from smoother physics interactions across the board, is that you can now swing your arms to run, much like the combat sim Blade and Sorcery, which is a welcome mechanic and much less intrusive and more natural feeling to me than clicking in the analog stick to sprint. Thirdly, and this is huge, this thing runs on the Quest 2 natively at 90 Hz without the use of asynchronous space warp, and it looks great. According to the leaked Quest 2 versus PC comparisons that already exist all over YouTube. This is particularly exciting because it opens the potential player base wide open. Any consumer can purchase a Quest 2 for $3.99 and start playing this game immediately. The kind of experience that until now was exclusive to PC VR. A bigger player base equals more VR adoption, equals a larger modding community, which equals an explosion of abundant and higher quality mods. And on the topic of modding, mods are supported day one via a modding SDK, which at launch supports avatar and level mods, with increased capabilities coming post-launch. This is very exciting, as it means in no time you'll be able to play as Spider-Girl, the Hulk, Tinkerbell, Shrek, Iron Man, Cuphead, Cup, Birdo, Old Greg, Reinhardt, The Matrix, Halo, Toilet Paper, and most importantly, Archer, Emissary of the Gorgonites. It's also been mentioned that a handy template for best practices when uploading or creating your custom avatars is coming post-launch, which will be very useful for modders regardless of experience level. And it's really refreshing to see this level of support for the community from the devs. And now on to my potential concerns, disappointments, and conclusion on Bonelabs. First, my main concern is actually in the storytelling department. This is an area that Boneworks was particularly weak in, despite being obviously heavily inspired by 2004's Half-Life 2, which does the storytelling thing rather well. Boneworks strung you through the story via recorded shorts shown on various screens throughout the levels, and they just weren't compelling enough to bother sitting or even standing through. I really hope Bonelabs improves on this system. The devs are advertising a layered narrative, in which collecting items, avatars, and clues throughout the game from various locations will enable you to progress through a mysterious story. This at least sounds a lot more interesting than what they delivered in the first game, but leaves a lot to the imagination as to what we're going to get. Whatever they mean, I really hope it's good. Or else. Second concern, recycled enemy types. I'm seeing a lot of recycled enemy types in these newest gameplay sessions, such as the null bodies, etc, etc. And I'm hoping there'll be enough new additions to spice things up a little, because fighting different types of thing is fun. Third concern, please less jankiness, please. I really hope this game has more consistent physics interactions than the last game, removing some of that jank that could easily on occasion cause a fighter jet pilot to hurl their guts after just half an hour of playtime. The top offender in the last game was the multitude of climbing sections. Climbing just didn't feel right, and unfortunately there were a lot of climbing sections. I hope they rectify this in Bonelabs by toning down the number of climbing sections or improving the climbing to the point that they just don't have to. Personally, I'm hoping for a mix of both of those solutions to be implemented. And that brings me to disappointed. There won't be any multiplayer. I'm not sure if this would even be possible due to hardware constraints, especially considering that this game has to run on the Quest 2, but the thought of Bonelab level gameplay with friends is just so awesome that I thought I'd mention this anyway. I'm sure we'll get it one day. Overall, I'm still very excited for this release, and I hope it can deliver on some of the absurd hype that's been building up amongst the VR community. Personally, I think this one is a must-buy, especially for those Quest 2 owners that didn't have a PC capable of playing Boneworks. I see Bonelab as being the definitive VR sandbox playground and a modder's haven for the next year and even beyond. This game, with the SDK on launch, the robust-looking Marrow engine to play with, and the continued support of Stress Level 0, could in my opinion spark a golden age of VR modding, much like when we had a long-lasting golden age of PC modding sparked by the release of Half-Life 2 back in 2004, which spawned entire fan-made games such as Garry's Mod and so many others. Finally, I will be streaming this game on Twitch ASAP. So if you're interested in seeing some live gameplay or have any questions to ask, my socials and links are down there in the description box. Subscribe or this onion gets it. Anyway, that's about it. See ya.